Hello, Lorenzo here. This is KSP to Mars, and we are here with episode 12, where we continue where we left off with the previous episode, as I'm wont to do with these episodic formats. Today we're trying to put Shepner in orbit, a brave and stupid Kerbal. He has full marks on stupidity and on courage, and he's treading in the footsteps of Fredbury that got crushed on last episode's installment of this series. His pod miraculously survived, and therefore we have now planned for an eventual return to Kerbin with this parachute. Just to give you some numbers on this rocket, it's 140 parts, it's got 12.1 kilometers per second of delta V, and interestingly that parachute that removes about 200 meters per second of delta V. If I remove that, it has 12.3 or 12.4. For this reason, I only have 2 batteries. This gives an electric charge pool of 250. We're slightly overcharged. We're at 252 now. I don't know how or why that happens, but we're going to not look at that. That means we can't transmit an infinite number of reports, but we should be able to transmit a few. Today we're going for EVA reports and crew reports, and hopefully Shepner will be able to re-enter safely. This is a very big question mark, though. This has never been achieved before from orbit. So we are going to try that. First things first though, let's get to orbit. So without further ado, let's launch this rocket. You can see it gets off the pad quite slowly, and that's because of course it's super big. Now I've alluded to this in the previous few episodes. What we need most in the space program is bigger engines. That way we can, if we want to, and we do want to, we can add a whole other stage that will lift this bit higher up, and of course then we get more delta V. Either that or we get more payload to orbit, which would allow us to do science. You will have noticed we're not bringing any goo canisters, we're not bringing any material base, we're just taking the Kerbal, and then he can write reports for us and basically tell us what's going on. Trying to play with the throttle so as not to waste too much fuel in pushing the air aside. It's quite thick, was the same thickness I think as on the stock game, but of course that thickness lasts for a while longer here on the real solar system mod. Coming up on solid fuel booster burnout, so I'm throttling up the liquid engines to full, ditching those boosters, and we are losing a little bit of speed, but not a lot. That means that I haven't overdone it on the throttle too much. Now comes the patient waiting game of seeing these stages burn out, separating them and moving on down up the rocket. The previous rocket from the last episode has been scrapped. The design was found to be unsafe after Fredbury died in it, and it was immediately redesigned by adding more fuel, more boosters and more rockets. So the difference here is we now have the last 2 stages are almost the same, but then the third stage is a triple column booster, and here down below we have of course another triple center core augmented by 2 outer liquid boosters per 1 inner column. Not sure if I'm saying that as eloquently as I could, but let's just call it like it is, and there's a lot of rockets in this pile. Still going straight up, we're at 12 kilometers now. It's about time to try and pitch over a little bit. I think on my last missions I have been pitching over a little bit too soon. A habit induced by stock KSP where the atmosphere really is quite thin and you immediately punch above the thick part of it and can start pitching over. Here in the real solar system you want to get a little bit of altitude first. Now I'm not completely sure I'm saying truth here, but that's the way I feel it is now. So if you know or think that I'm completely wrong, please pitch in the comments, and this could be a group effort. Some of my subscribers are making rockets for me, giving comments, helpful advice, and that's very much appreciated because it's not quite so easy to do these things in the real solar system. But today I have good hopes that we will manage something at least. We're coming up on the first stage burnout now as we are pitching over. This is good because this whole thing will be ditched, nothing has to fall away from the sides, so it doesn't have to, it's not a very delicate maneuver. Basically just chuck it away and light the next set of engines. Going to do so now. See, here we go, a nice triple boosted stack, and I'm going to increase the pitch over a little bit. The thrust to weight ratio now isn't stellar, it's about 1.4, 1.5 if I recall my readouts from the Kerbal Engineer plugin. but I'm hoping that we won't need a lot more. We are already at 40 kilometers, so the air should be thinning out a bit. And we have pitched over halfway there, and now it's just a long game of adding on those meters per second, getting up to orbital speed. So I'm going to not talk over all of that. I'm going to shut up now, and I will talk to you when this stage burns out. So see you then. So we're approaching the third stage burnout, or was this the second stage? Well, not counting the SRBs, then this is the second stage. We're approaching its burnout. We are already at 2 kilometers per second, and we are still slowly climbing. We're now at 85 kilometers, so we're still in the upper reaches of the atmosphere. But we want to do our burn as low as possible, and I think this is a good move. So here we go on to the third stage. And this is basically a simple rocket again. Just some fuel tanks, 4 of the small ones, and a rocket engine. Our next stage, that will be the very small engine and 2 rocket tanks, so everything is looking fairly simple now. The starting thrust to weight ratio for this third stage is similar to that second stage that's now falling away, already 3 kilometers behind, but that will more than double as these tanks drain. Now we are at 95 kilometers, so we're really in the upper wisps of the atmosphere, and I'm hoping that I can flatten out this angle a little bit. We should see we are still not quite pointing towards the horizon, because I don't want to start plummeting back down, not at any cost. So we're expending some delta V, maintaining altitude, and I don't really know how to get around this, because either I punch up straight and go high, then pitch over, wasting a lot of delta V, or at least wasting overth effect and getting less efficiency out of my rocket fuel by burning it high up, or I pitch over rather early, as I did now, and perform most of my burn through the atmosphere, thin as it is. So I'm still trying to find my balance in that regard here in the real solar system. I'm not going to angle up a little bit more, up to the 45-degree mark, to just get us a little bit higher so that we're out of that atmosphere once and for all, and hopefully then I can pitch over to the horizon and round out that orbit. So far we are doing pretty well. We're up to 3.5 kilometers per second almost, and if I recall correctly, and I think I do, this upper stage has 3.5 or 3.3 kilometers per second of delta V all by itself. Now we need about 7.9 kilometers per second to be in orbit. That's about the whole upper stage from now, and we are not through the third stage yet. So all things considered, I am hopeful. Now I've said that a lot of times before already on this series, so perhaps something horrible will happen, but let's not count on that and just assume things will be going well. We are going to breach 4 kilometers per second on this stage, so I am definitely a happy rocketeer. Yes, that I am. I was planning to skip ahead to the next stage, but I've talked all the way through that, so no need for that. So here we go with the last stage almost. There it goes, the tiny engine propelling us the last of the way there. We're down now from 140 parts to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 parts only. So that's a 10-fold reduction, and hopefully this little rocket that can in fact put us into orbit. This burn will take a while, it's about 4 minutes, so I'm going to black that out for you, and I will see you when this stage burns out, or as usual, when something interesting happens. And here we are, 5 minutes later, give or take, and coming up on the burnout of this last stage. We're now at 7 kilometers per second at 134 kilometers, and it's going to be very tight whether we're going to make this or not. So, ooh, maybe not. It looks good. Our apoapsis is now at 200 kilometers. That means I'm going to cut the engine, guys. I was going to say I'm going to cut the engine, guys. Then I decided I wanted to say boys, and I said goys. Right, so that's how my mind works sometimes. We're at 7.3 kilometers per second at 136 kilometers of altitude, and we have a periapsis of 80 kilometers. This is not high enough, but we still have fuel. So once we get to the apoapsis, we will raise that, and we can do our mission, our self-imposed mission, designed by Nathan in part. I think you're watching, Nathan. Hi, Nathan. We're going to do a lot of EVA reports, and we have some electric charge. Be sure not to use that up, so disabling the SAS, because we have no way to replenish that charge. You will have noticed I did not go into a polar orbit as you suggested, and that's just because of delta V reasons. Going in the equatorial plane here in the real solar system gives us 400 meters per second, or 480 even, of free delta V, and as you can see, we need every last one of those meters per second. So no polar orbit, but an orbit, and I'm very happy with that. So let's start with the science goal, and look at that real solar system Kerbin. We're at almost 200 kilometers and it still looks like this. That's amazing, and that sight alone is very much worth the mod. If you haven't been convinced yet, be convinced by this nice atmosphere and gloom. Play it, it's really good. Right, so on to the science. Let's do some of it. We're going to do a crew report in space, right? Crew reports, so they will be useless, but the EVAs, I'm hoping that they will be different per biome. So Shepner is now outside doing an EVA report above Kerbin's water well. We had that already, so for now no science yet. But let's see what happens when we pass over land here. So I'm going to accelerate time forward a little bit. We are still not at the apoapsis, so we can safely do that. Doesn't look much different, but or have we? Oh, we have passed over the land. I accelerated too much, so let's accelerate some more. For 10, it goes immediately to 100. It seems the 50 times time acceleration has been removed here, but that doesn't really bother me because the planet is huge. We can do with some more time acceleration. We're on the dark side now. We didn't bring any batteries because that would just drain our electric charge, which, remember, we have no way of replenishing. So I'm going to put him on EVA. Grapple around in the dark. Where is he? There he is. Let's do an EVA report. Again, over Kerbin's water. So we need a better way to gauge where we're at, and the sun should help us do that. For now though, let's first focus on the apoapsis and round out our orbit, because that is something we actually need. And I think I'm going to... Oh, I don't have a reaction wheel. I wanted to disable the reaction wheel to preserve as much charge as possible, but we only have the pods one, and that's, I don't think we can disable that, and if we disable it there is no more controlling it, so we need it. I'm going to throttle up, and a 150 kilometer orbit should be good, and we even have fuel to spare to lower that back down into the atmosphere if we dare do that. So Shepner, try again. Try again and get an EVA report. Yes! Space just above the highlands. Great, 8 science points. Get that data and get back in there and transmit that back home. And we can see we are at 247 electricity now. And let's see how much one transmission drains that. 247. That's 40 science, so we can do 4... Well, we can do 5 more reports if we're very thrifty with our reaction wheel. And of course we're missing out on the polar biomes. We need to get into a polar orbit for that, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's first focus on these biomes that we can now have orbital access to. EVA report, grasslands, boom, got it. Get back into the capsule and transmit that home. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, we finally have a successful mission. The survival of Shepner is not yet guaranteed, but we are getting science points and the plan so far appears to be working. So that is amazing. Let's time warp forward a little bit more. And we're still in the dark, but see if Shepner is maybe over another biome again. Here we go. No, still over the grasslands. Get back in there. Can we do a EVA report over dawn? Well, we can, but that won't give us any special credit. We're over the ocean again. That doesn't give us anything, and here we are coming up to the shores. And hopefully we are going to pass over something that resembles a desert or mountains. Highlands, desert. It's all coming together now. You can tell I'm excited. I want these points. So let's accelerate time forward once again. You can see the ground is passing a lot faster than it is for the stock Kerbin. And we are higher. We are at 170 kilometers versus something like 70 for a low Kerbin orbit, but we are much faster indeed. So now Shepner is just going to hang outside here and occasionally try his EVA reporting skills. Still grasslands, but I think we are coming up on some mountains or highlands or what they are called, maybe even badlands. So we have a lot of different biomes on Kerbin. And I think this is because of precisely the problem I'm running into, that if you're not able to leave the planet, you still get to do science. Now, of course, the developers never intended for the real solar system difficulties, but then again, they feel quite similar as to when I was a new player and had trouble getting into orbit around stock Kerbin. So I think this is a good thing that there is a lot of science to be had here on Kerbin. Now I think I should be able to... there we go. Kerbin's mountains. Keep that, get back inside, and transmit that home. And see if the crew reports. The crew report is not biome dependent, that's just space. So we're not going to be able to get anything from the crew reports, but we are able to get stuff from these biomes. Let's have a look. So this is what the view for the people in the ISS must look like. They're a bit higher still, they're about 300 kilometers, and I think their terrain has a bit higher resolution, but otherwise exactly the same. Yeah. Definitely. So let's see if we can get that. Ooh, you can't warp faster than one time while Kerbals are on a ladder. Thanks. Get back into the ship and let's accelerate over the deserts. And maybe we can grab some badlands. I don't really know where the badlands are, but the cross between the desert, or the intersection of desert and highlands seems like a likely candidate, but it's not. So we should be able to get over the deserts. And then we've had grasslands, we've had mountains, we've had shores, we've had ocean, we've had desert, if we catch it. Yeah, deserts. Poles, ice caps, we are not going to be able to do those. Badlands, but they are very hard to find, I think. And we have charge for another 2 reports. So maybe these hills are different again. I'm not sure about that. Let's see when we are over them here. Hop outside again, Shepner. I think Shepner is getting very adept at donning and doffing his spacesuit and getting through that hatch. Oh, this is mountains again. The mountain deserts count as regular deserts. So, get back inside you. I'm very happy I only packed the 2 batteries. I was considering bringing more, but that would have hamstrung our Delta V too much, maybe. Let's have a look. Ooh, this looks marvelous, don't you think? It's really good. You can tell I'm quite pleased with this real solar system mod. It's Nathan Kell that makes it. That's his name on the forums at any rate. I'm wondering it's not the same Nathan that's my subscriber that watches all these things. Anyway, whichever way that turns out, Nathan Kell, you're a boss. You made an made an awesome mod. Kerbin's deserts again. I think we've exhausted this treasure trove of science and EVA reports on the shores. I think we did that from like the ground. Yeah, this is the deserts again. Now what I'm going to do is try and land in the desert. Highlands. I don't think we have highlands yet. I'm going to see if this counts as highlands. And then I'm going to try and land in the desert so that if Shepner survives, he can do a soil sample and EVA report from the surface there, giving us yet more science. Grasslands. Now grasslands we had. So now comes the awfully awkward, difficult, horrible part, making a re-entry. Now I'm going to just lower the periapsis, like, you know, is the nice way to make a re-entry, but the altitude will be critical. If I make it go too too low, we will get crushed and killed that way. If I make it too high, nothing really happens. We could burn up. That definitely counts as something happening, I think. If I make it too high, then maybe the heat shield will give out before we're down. But I'm gonna go with this, 71 kilometers. And as this video is running on for quite a while now, with me droning and babbling and doing EVA reports, I'm going to black it out here, and I will see you when I've done this burn. 26 meters per second should be no problem, and when we are intersecting the atmosphere first. So hang on to your seats, belts, pants, hats, hang on to your hats, and I will see you there. And there we are. Compared to the maneuver node I showed you, I moved the periapses east-west, well, that way a little bit, so that hopefully I will be landing in this area, either the mountains or the biomes. I didn't account for the planet's rotation, so the periapse where I put it was about here. But we're going very fast, and I'm thinking at least this way we should be able to make it onto land, either here the mountains, the highlands, or the desert, something that we haven't have soil samples from at any rate. Now this re-entry is hair-raising. Very difficult to predict what will happen. Shepner's safety is very questionable right now. I did grant him the privilege, the help, the whatever, of giving him the simplest re-entry vehicles of all, just one pod. However, it also has just the one heat shield, the one that's built in with the pod. It has 250 credits points of ablation. Now, the way these heat shields work is twofold. They reflect a little bit of the heat, I think about 5%, and they dissipate the rest by ablating. So while they have ablative shield resource left, they are actively cooling heat and throwing it away from the ship by vaporizing the material. If this runs out, the heat shield is still a heat shield. It still reflects a little bit of the heat, and it is a part with a high heat tolerance in the way of the rest of the ship. However, it's not actively dissipating heat anymore because, well, there's nothing to ablate anymore. So once this runs out, it's not immediately game over, but Shepner will then definitely start getting barbecued. That's the heat bit. That's dangerous. Something else that's dangerous are the G-forces. We have 7.4 kilometers per second of speed to scrub. And if we do this at, let's say, 10 Gs, at which Shepner will be compacted pretty heavily, that's about 100 meters per second, that's still over a minute to do it. 10 Gs is the upper limit that is, well, that would be nice for Shepner to survive. If, however, we drop too sharply into the atmosphere, either by our trajectory or by decelerating and simply falling, then we will encounter such thick air that our deceleration will spike. There will be many Gs and Shepner will die, or the capsule will get crushed. There is another factor involved. Oh my god, what's happening to the frame rate? I'm at 4 frames per second. Now I'm at the good frame rate again. No idea what happened. As the parts heat up, they can also take damage. Damaged parts are less resistant to G-forces. So if we are starting to overheat, one thing, by the way, I should not forget, is to ditch this rocket. So here we are, just the capsule. Just the capsule, the air, the planet, and Newton. So, what I was saying, parts can also get damaged by the heat. At least Shepner is having fun. And that reduces their G tolerance. So, if we are under a lot of G stresses, we are overheating a little bit, things can also go catastrophically wrong, as parts are weakened by the heat and then fail. So we are now in the atmosphere, albeit the upper reaches. We are not significantly heating up yet. I have locked in the retrograde orientation with the SES system on, but this capsule, I've been told, should be aerodynamically stable as well. It is very likely that these batteries will burn off, but that doesn't really matter. These antennae are welcome to burn off as well, as long as the parachute remains attached. Our periapsis here is going to be 63 kilometers, and hopefully that will provide an altitude that will slow us down, but not incinerate or crush us. Now this is the first real-sized, real-speed, full-on orbital re-entry I have ever performed, be it manned or unmanned, in the real solar system mod. So all these figures are very much, well, I want to say painstakingly calculated and weighed, but they're just guessed by me. So what's going to happen now is really anyone's guess. The heat shield is still at full integrity. It is heating up very slightly. We're at minus 29 instead of minus 37, but that could just be random, really. What we're looking for is temperatures in the hundreds or if not thousands of degrees. So for now we are definitely good. I don't know what's up, but my frame rate is suffering a little bit. I hope it will remain watchable. It was not this way on the Ascent, so I don't know what is going on. Hopefully nothing horrible will happen as we descend, because this is an exciting bit and I want Shepner to live. Not only because he's an awesome astronaut, Kerbal, and just great of character, but also because he carries the vital scoops that allow us to take surface samples of this enigmatic desert in which we'll be landing, granting us yet more science. Of course, also, if the capsule survives, and for that it doesn't really matter if Shepner lives or not, if the capsule survives, then we get science points for recovering a craft from orbit, and that's a first, so that should be some good science bonus as well. We're at 90 kilometers now, still in the upper thin reaches of the atmosphere, still at sub-zero temperatures, and still at 0 nanosieverts per hour, which isn't really relevant for this mission. So, 91 kilometers. I'm going to cut this video again, and I will see you when we drop to the 67 kilometer periapsis or something else interesting starts happening, because now we're just looking at the ocean and the pod, and I don't know how long it will be until something interesting happens. So see you in a bit. And here I'm back. We are still not being incinerated, and here the first landmass has come into view, and with that to provide a backdrop against the ocean, which I don't know, might be the cause of this horrendous frame rate, provides a nice indicator of how fast we're actually moving. We're at 7 kilometers per second still relative to the surface. Ooh, and orbital speed is 7.8 kilometers per second even. 7.3 kilometers relative to the surface, and you can see that continent just whizzing past. We're at 84 kilometers now, still descending obviously. We'll make it to at least 67, because that's our periapsis as dictated by ballistics. And of course the air will intervene with that and slow us down and possibly capture as well. We will be captured, that's for sure, because we are slowing down enough to not make it back out into space. So that's for sure. We're passing this peninsula, and now I am starting to wonder if we will even make it to the landmass that I was aiming for. Let's have a look. We're at 82 kilometers now. Slight heating. I don't really have much else interesting to say, but I'm just biting my nails hoping that this will turn out well. So far, it is. We have shed enough velocity to not make it back out into space. We're definitely going in, and so far we're doing so very, very gradually, which is the way we want to do it, or at least I wanted to do it. I may have overdone it because we are slowing down very slowly. So, and the flip side to this is that while we are encountering a low amount of g-forces, so far it's less than a g even, the heating that will inevitably occur will therefore also be protracted. It will not be as severe as if we were falling straight down like a brick, but it will take a long time. And the question is the heat shield and indeed the capsule and indeed Shepner up to that? And I very much hope the question to that will be a resounding yes, of course. What are you thinking? But I'm not quite sure about that. Sorry about that. That's just the stress getting to me. And as we sink deeper and deeper into the atmosphere at 78 kilometers now, we can see the horizon starting to creep up on us. And I'm still keeping my fingers crossed to make it to a landing, but as you can see for this ballistics arc, that in fact is not going to happen. So our only bet for extra science now is to recover the craft and get science from that, because Shepner will, in whatever way, shape or form, he will land in the ocean or crash or sizzle or whatever. So there's no desert surface samples. So that's a lesson. Don't put your periapsis too far ahead of your target. The atmosphere will slow you down right quick. And even though we've only shed about, I think, a kilometer per second. Oh, here comes the burning effects. So we are in enough of an atmosphere now to get some heating. How is our heat shield doing? The heat shield is now at 85 degrees. So I think we are at the cusp, on the cusp of our shock phase, our super tense, incredibly scary re-entry phase. The G-forces are climbing, we're at almost half a G, and this way it will of course take forever to slow down. Fortunately though, or unfortunately, depending on how the future unfolds, we are going to be sinking into the deeper, thicker atmosphere. So because of that it will take shorter, but it also will be rougher. So how that pans out is something we are going to see right now. We're at 120 degrees, still very cool in heat shield country. We will need to reach at least 1500, 2000 degrees to make this heat shield get sweaty. I'm not sure if that's a good metaphor or comparison for a heat shield, but this is definitely the point at which things get interesting. We're at 70 kilometers, and I'll remind you that in the stock game this is where the atmosphere starts, and you generally enter here at a sedate 2.5 kilometers per second. We're a good 2 to 3 times faster than that, and that means our heat shield will receive a lot more punishment than it does in the stock game. And correspondingly, I'm a lot more excited and tense now. I want this to succeed. I want Shepner to get back to the surface and recover this vessel for his superiors, for his science brethren, so that they can, well, learn stuff and research fuel lines. Research fuel lines, bigger tanks and bigger engines. That's what we need. We're piling on the Gs now. We're at 1 G. Well, that's not really piling it on yet, but at 15 in this red line is where Shepner starts to get in trouble. The heating is getting more intense, although the heat shield is still doing fine. It doesn't need to ablate yet, or well, it's not actually sentient, but it's not hot enough yet to ablate. So far, so good. We're expecting some explosions as these battery packs overheat, but the capsule should be able to stand up to that. Capsule itself is at 270 degrees and the heat shield is at the same temperature. It doesn't really make much of a difference at these relatively low temperatures. We're now at 6.8 meters per second, almost 60 kilometers in altitude. I want to see this speed go down before we go much deeper, because otherwise, as we get around to the 30, 40, maybe even 45 kilometer mark, the air gets really thick and we are liable to crush Shepner. So here goes. The first point of ablation has happened, and we are now almost at 2 G's deceleration. 430 degrees on there, and I'm going to slightly re-angle the capsule to face exactly retrograde. 6.5 kilometers per second remaining, 58 kilometers altitude, and we are reaching 500 degrees. So far everything is going really well. It's gradually increasing. We're still at only 2 Gs. This is very sedate, and our heat shield is standing up to the heat very well. We're at 246 ablations of 250, so that has a lot of kick in it remaining. However, we are dropping through the atmosphere. 55 kilometers now, way below our original periapsis, but as I told you, we are definitely re-entering. That there is our final rocket stage, re-entering without a heat shield, and that will not do well, in fact. So here we are now approaching 800 degrees, but under 6 kilometers per second. We're getting to 3, almost 4 Gs. Shepner is definitely uncomfortable. The heat shield though is not, and it is still only ablated 10 points out of 250. 50 is the amount of kilometers we're at, and any fisherman's boats or cargo ships should be able to see a streaking comet or meteoroid or indeed space capsule going through their horizons. We're approaching 5 Gs now. Shepner is definitely starting to get scared and uncomfortable. The heat shield is still trucking. It's at 1300 degrees now and starting to ablate slightly faster. However, we are under 5 kilometers per second. The Gs are increasing more, approaching 6 Gs. Shepner though doesn't seem to notice it. We can have a look from the IVA cockpit and we can see some flames. And we are now at less than 4.5 kilometers per second, resuming the outside view. Let's have a look here. The heat shield seems to be doing fine. Something is exploding. What is exploding? Something happened. Everything died. Vessel is destroyed. What happened? Command pod Mark 1 burned up on re-entry. Shepner Kerman was killed. But the heat shield was fine. Apparently it was not. Shit. What the hell happened? 6.6 Gs. Lots of distances traveled. Shepner Kerman killed in action. Burned up on re-entry. How? Well, I don't know. Something wrong with the heat shield? It's the built-in one from the pod. So it can't have been on the wrong way. Maybe it just wasn't enough, that the heat shield was unable to dump the heat fast enough by ablating, but it was barely ablating. I have no idea what happened. Shepner Kerman, though, is unfortunately a casualty of the space program. He will be remembered fondly by his family, by his friends, but most importantly, by the scientists. Because he was the first of his kind to look down on the planet and see it truly for what it is, and most importantly, write home about it. So that with these poetic observations about the planet, the scientists can develop larger fuel tanks. Here they are. Next up is the Poodle engine and the larger tank. This is great, we need this so much. 90 science points. Fuel tanks, fuel lines, 90 science points as well. Advanced construction. Does this have heat shields? This does not have heat shields. We don't need this so much. Oh, we do, if we want to adapt to the larger fuel tanks. Aeroplanes, I might turn to those if I'm really desperate. Control, this would be nice but not necessary. Power, very necessary. That way we don't need to bring so much batteries, which are heavy. And we can bring a solar panel instead. Labs and more sensors, very nice for science points. And the gear bay. So my priority now is fuel lines, bigger engine, solar panel. Yeah. Not quite sure how I'm going to proceed. I'm probably going to shoot for the poles, make a lander, something that will land there. But something that's going to get there in any expedited fashion will have to be at least suborbital, and that means coping with the horrible re-entry. Well, I've not solved that yet. It's back to the VAB. Back to the rocket drawing board. Time to design a heat shield that works. Thanks for watching. I think this has been a long episode, but we did achieve some monumental things and we killed a Kerbal, so it's, that takes time. Thanks for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. As everyone knows, subscribers are at least 500% more awesome than regular folk, and you get perks. I haven't decided what perks yet, but you get perks. See you for next episode. This was Lorenzo. Goodbye.